Hi, I am Hannah Sawyer, and this is my final project for Dr. Stefan Vicky for his Europe After World War II class. And the topic that I chose was the legacy of Margaret Thatcher. On the 4th of May, 1979, Margaret Thatcher became the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And it wasn't known at the time of her appointment, but she would go on to be the longest-serving Prime Minister to exist in the 20th century. Her conservative campaign had run with promises to escape the winter of discontent, known by its persistent high inflation combined with high unemployment and industrial strife. She promised reforms to control inflation and corral trade unions that she claimed were becoming too powerful. This image displayed on the screen is one of the posters from her campaign, touching on the previous Labour Party's term and the unemployment levels that grew during their time in office. In the beginning of her days in office as Prime Minister, she raised the interest rate to 17 to 30% for many customers to try to tackle inflation rates, which were remaining stagnant at very high levels at the time. She gave millions the opportunity to buy homes at discounted rates from the government, fulfilling her promise of the right to buy as another part of her idea to create a property-owning democracy. In October of 1980, she gave her legendary "The Lady is Not for Turning" speech. She addressed many obstacles that her party would have to overcome, including inflation, or the parent of unemployment, as she termed it. She claimed that without a healthy economy, Britain could not have a healthy society, and without a healthy society, the economy would not stay healthy for long, claiming that government drains society of not only its wealth, but its initiative as well. She claimed that she would not be reversing any of her policies because she believed them to still be at work, coining one of her most famous catchphrases.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The lady's not for turning.
However, in the beginning of 1982, despite all efforts to control inflation, unemployment rose past 3 million, which hadn't occurred since the 1930s, and Thatcher's approval ratings began to plummet. That is, until the Falklands War. In April 1982, the Argentinian military invaded the Falkland Islands, which was a British colony. Thatcher decided in mere days after the invasion to send troops to the Falklands to defend their colony, claiming in her 1993 memoir that there was no alternative to her past actions. She sent a naval task force that included 38 warships, 77 auxiliary vessels, and 11,000 soldiers, sailors, and Marines to the aid of the Falkland Islanders. With less than 300 British deaths and only 3 native islanders killed in the conflict, the war lasted only 74 days before the Argentinian junta surrendered on June 14, 1982. Historians agree that without this swift victory for the UK, Thatcher would have most assuredly fallen into failure and lost her title of the Iron Lady. However, Thatcher was decisive, determined, and effective, according to historian Chris Collins, and this prompt and courageous decision caused for her popularity to soar, winning the office again in 1983. her nickname was once again legitimate in the eyes of the British citizens. Thatcher also bolstered approval by supporting Ronald Reagan's policies of rollback against the Soviets, even allowing American forces to station nuclear cruise missiles at British bases. She convinced Ronald Reagan to work with Mikhail Gorbachev, claiming that he was a man we could do business with. Without her negotiations with Soviet leaders and U.S. leaders, the Cold War would not have ended in the same fashion that it did. Margaret, being in the Conservative Party, would always fall on the side of the business rather than the striker or the union. There were many strikers across Britain throughout Thatcher's term, but the shedding of workers helped British firms deal with overmanning problems, which enabled the economy to catch up to competitive productivity levels among other advanced countries. Inflation dropped and interest rates followed, so Margaret's plan had ultimately succeeded in the categories that she desired. Thatcher increased privatization of companies, changing them from public to private shares. This included privatization of BT, gas, British Aerospace, and more. She also allowed the Big Bang in London, an enormous deregulation of the stock markets that led to significant changes to the financial market structure at the time. London became even more of a financial hub, which was a success to both the United Kingdom and to Thatcher. Unfortunately, she also introduced the poll tax, which was deeply unpopular across all demographics. The poll tax replaced the rates system, which had been in place in the UK since the 17th century and had previously taxed people based off of the property that they owned and how much it was worth. But now this poll tax was given to each person for a fixed sum. Riots all over the UK ensued, and soon Thatcher was challenged for her position, resigning after more than a decade in power. Since she was a radical conservative who wanted to completely change the manner in which the United Kingdom was run, Margaret Thatcher was likely to have some people that were less than fond of her. Those who did feel a liking for her and respect for her were some of those that benefited from her policies, whether that be a stockbroker who suddenly had seemingly all the freedom in the world after the Big Bang, or someone who is now allowed to purchase the house that they were previously renting from the government. However, many citizens of the United Kingdom disliked Thatcher, since she said that she was for the working class, but often called the labor unions the enemy within. But if she was disapproved for her policy, she was despised for her personality. She divided the political sphere in the UK and became internationally recognized for her stubbornness and refusal to turn. The Iron Lady is not always used in a positive context, the term changing its connotation depending on the party that the person talking likely belongs to. So does Margaret Thatcher deserve her title of the Iron Lady? Margaret Thatcher was a revolutionary public figure. She was among the first female politicians to be recognized for her ability to govern, and did not let public opinion sway her in any capacity. She inherited a country that was in a downspin, both economically and societally, and managed to lift it out of the hump to stand on the global stage again among the other competitive capitalist nations that led the world. She is remembered today for her unwavering conservative beliefs and for her stubborn tactics as to how to achieve international success. So ultimately, Margaret Thatcher did earn her nickname of the Iron Lady, because if anyone can agree on one thing, it is that she was ironclad.